I think we're cooked. A few years ago, this video of Will Smith eating spaghetti went viral on the internet, and it freaking blew our minds. Fast forward a couple of years, and this is a new AI video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. The sounds, the visuals, everything you're seeing right now is completely fake AI generated. That ain't really doing nothing to you? Alright, then let's watch this video of this guy playing Fortnite.
Yes! Woo! Victory Royale with a pickaxe!
Everything you just watched was a lie. None of it was real. In only a couple of years, AI has almost completely mastered content creation, visuals, effects, sounds, graphics, designs. We're literally about to reach the point in life where we can't tell what's real and what's not anymore.
What do you think about the idea that we're just a bunch of prompts?
If I'm just a prompt, mine clearly said add anxiety and a caffeine addiction. Are we real or AI?
Morning, everyone. So in that clip, 2023, Will Smith eating spaghetti, some of you may have seen it at the time, it became one of the internet's most shared examples of just how bad AI generated video was at the time. Weird looking hands, noodles that defied physics, and a face that was almost but not quite human looking. And people shared that as a joke, proof that AI was nowhere near ready for prime time. What you just watched is what the same kind of prompt produces today, and that's not 2 decades of progress, that's about 2 years. So if we think about that for a moment, that pace of change is exactly why we're here today. Not to talk about AI as a possibility, but to talk about what organisations like yours are actually doing with the AI right now, practically and responsibly, to deliver real value. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Jen Watkins, the co-founder of InterCloud9. Quick housekeeping note, please do drop any questions that you have in the Q&A, and we'll get to those towards the end of the session. We'll be recording this and sending out the recording in a resource sheet for you after the session. Today, I'm really thrilled to be joined by 2 very experienced professionals who've genuinely lived the story of AI up to date. Welcome David Hancox, who's Chief Operating Officer at the Chartered Institute of Building.
Morning. Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be here, Jen.
Thanks, David. And Bill Wilson, who is my colleague and senior consultant at InterCloud9, who led much of this work with the CIOB.
Morning, everyone.
So between the 3 of us, we're going to show you what it actually looks like to move from AI curiosity to AI capability inside a membership organisation. And I know many of you are from the sector and facing the real constraints and considerations that CIOB went through in this project. So that's what we're going to be covering today. But just before we get into that, I'm going to just do a quick look at where the membership sector is with AI right now. And I suspect that some of you might recognise your own organisations in these numbers. So where is our sector then? Just before we hear from David and Bill, I want to just ground us in where the sector stands right now with AI, because the numbers are more interesting than they might first appear. This data is from Membership World's State of the Nation report, and this is an IMIS research study that was conducted in late 2025 with around 400 professionals from across the sector. So it's a good benchmark of where we are right now. If we look at the individual first, 62% of membership professionals are already using AI, some every day, some up to a few times a month. Daily usage has grown by 9 percentage points in a single year. So it's obviously really fast growth. Only 17% are saying that they've never used AI. So as individuals, people in the sector are definitely actively engaging in AI. But here's where it gets quite interesting. Only 39% of those people say that their organisation uses AI. And only 49% of membership professionals feel technologically prepared for the future, which is just under half, of course. And despite that, AI investment ranks 13th out of 20 organisational priorities. So it's not even in the top 10. So what we can see from that is that we've got a workforce that's already experimenting quite quietly, perhaps individually, often without any sort of organisational framework. Leaders haven't yet made AI a strategic priority. And that gap's not just interesting, but it's also risky. Moving on then, where it shows up is where the money's going. AI is now the single biggest technology investment priority across the membership sector. That's ahead of websites, LMS, CRMs. That's a really remarkable shift. And 12 months ago, that wouldn't have been the case. But this is where the tension starts to show. AI represents 29% of technology investment. So CRM still accounts for 71% of total tech spend, which isn't a criticism. CRM is a foundational piece of infrastructure, but it does tell us that AI is winning the priority conversation around technology spend, but CRM is still winning the budget conversation. So the direction of travel is clear. The pace is still catching up. So what are people actually doing with AI then day to day? I think it's largely practical, is what these numbers suggest. Content creation dominates. 57% of membership professionals are using AI to generate newsletters and emails and social media posts, probably no great surprises there. 49% are using it for broader marketing content. So that's more than half the sector using AI to produce communications. But many of them are doing that without a formal organisational policy or approach. What I find particularly striking is that 57% of members, the people that your organisations exist to serve, agree that AI is already changing how their own companies operate. And 50% of them are saying that it's actively helping them to work smarter. So that suggests that members are ahead of the curve. They're experiencing AI-enabled workplaces and working practices within their own professional environments. So when they come to you for CPD or resources or membership services, their expectations will, of course, increasingly be shaped by their own experience of using AI in their organization. So that's not something that will happen in the future. That's something that's happening right now. And when we look at where members are most comfortable with AI, there is a clear pattern. They're really comfortable with where the value is obvious to them, and that could be around things like personalization in particular, recommending content, for example, program suggestions, and marketing that's personalized rather than that sort of old-fashioned spray and pray approach. But where they're much less comfortable is where they feel in those areas where they feel that a professional trust and human judgment is essential. So those are important dynamics really for membership organisations to think about when deploying AI first. So here's the picture then we're left with. We've got a workforce in the sector that's experimenting with AI. We've got members who are whose expectations are rising because they're using AI in their own workplaces. But we've got investment that's starting to follow intention, but definitely not there yet. And most organisations are still without the governance, the frameworks, and the strategic clarity to really get this stuff going properly. So that's the point that we're going to pick up for this session then. And CIOB have really kind of led the charge here in thinking about how to close those important gaps. So, David, let's bring you into the conversation then. And starting at the beginning, before InterCloud 9 came into the picture, what was CIOB's relationship with AI? Was it something that people were talking about, experimenting with, or was it kind of quietly off the radar?
Thanks, Jen, and thanks for sharing those insights. And that's really sort of interesting to sort of assess that. And I think where we went through into 2014 a sort of big CRM project, and that was very much sort of focus for the organisation. But certainly over sort of last year and once we came out of that, yes, AI were conversations that were happening at sort of trustee level. We had published an AI playbook. Very much we've got a digital and sort of an AI advisory board, and that was sort of aimed at the sort of the broader built environment marketplace that we operate in. But probably did we have a sort of a formalized sort of approach to AI strategy? I guess no, we didn't. You're right in terms of some of those previous stats. Having been to our sort of annual members forum, it was something that members were very much talking about, wanting, sort of demanding. And I think the realization that we needed to sort of have, a properly thought out approach and strategy, because there's a lot of there's an opportunity that actually you spend money not wisely or not on the right things, and there are some risks around this. And certainly I think again it resonated that a lot of people are using ChatGPT or other forms in their sort of personal life, but not necessarily having the knowledge, the skills to apply that in a sort of a business and operation unit. And there are some real risks within there, uploading personal data or company data into an open source model where you don't have control. So I think we knew we needed to do something, and it was really how do we go about that, and what were the next steps.
Great, thanks, David. So, Bill, could you perhaps begin by sharing some stats with us from the AI audit that took place within CIB? What did you find there?
Yeah, so the results are very probably in line with the survey itself, with staff experimenting with that. So here we use the Microsoft Purview AI monitoring tool to get these stats over a 4-week period. Actually, I think it was in October. I suspect if we did that now, we'd get a greater usage across the organisation. So there's CIB have around about 200 staff, so quite a lot of staff looking at that. No surprise that Copilot was at the top of the list, because that becomes partly a standard within the Microsoft tool set. One of the other things we did, so that was kind of looking behind the scenes. One of the other things we did a staff survey into AI. So looking at various aspects, one of those being, what are you using it for? What do you see as the risks are? What guidance and training would you like? So there was about 30 questions we asked staff, and again to gain insight to obviously how it's being used, but how it could be used going forward. And we had again a good response level. Around about 113 staff replied. Now we constructed those questions in the questionnaire in such a way that if the CIB wanted to, they could run that survey again within 12 months' time to see how the dial has really shifted in a number of areas. So basically, just to sum up here, Jen, I think, as you said, the organisation was drafting and editing content, summarising documents, supporting research work, but basically improving individual productivity.
Great, thanks, Bill. It's really interesting. So let's turn back to you then, David. What would you say moved this from a board conversation of intent towards let's actually commission something and do some work? And critically, how did you make that case internally to actually get a project underway?
I think the stats there that Bill shared are sort of are really interesting, and I guess it was a recognition that we needed to do something in this space and sort of put this into a sort of proper plan, proper initiative. And I think it also was, there was a lot of activity going on with my sort of digital data and technology team, but actually it's a broader organizational project and piece of work. So it was key to us to understand exactly where we were now, in order to then sort of have a proper plan that could take us forward. It wasn't about sort of trying to dive in and start deploying lots and lots of technology. It was about taking our teams on that journey and making sure we had a sort of a clear roadmap and how we could implement it. So very much, understanding the current state was really important before we then, committed, time and resource to actually making this reality. Without knowing where you are, there's a danger you go off on different paths, and certainly, I've some conversation with my head of DDAT and stats coming out from Microsoft that 80% of sort of AI projects and use cases sort of failed because they weren't properly thought through, they weren't designed correctly. So we wanted to avoid that and make sure that we were spending our members' money wisely and in the appropriate areas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what would you say is, of course, being a member of the leadership team over at CIIB yourself, what would you say were giving your colleagues pause for thought in SLT?
I think various different things. I mean, certainly, we from a governance perspective, there are some risks around AI, making sure it's it's deployed correctly. But so that's sort of, I suppose, the risk side. But in terms of the I suppose opportunity side from sort of the membership marketing department, we could see there would be we could look at what was going on in the wider membership arena, but also in our own sort of personal lives, our own interactions with other organisations, some of the opportunities that existed. So it was just trying to get that right balance between sort of risk and opportunity. But I think a recognition very much that we needed to need to push forward in this arena, and we've recently had a new CEO that's sort of come in with a sort of a new set of priorities, and it's very much we knew before Victoria joined that sort of digital innovation, AI would be very much something that she would be looking to move forward. So hence understanding where we were, so we could come up with a plan and link it to our broader sort of five-year corporate plan as well.
Right, thanks, David. That's really helpful. So, Bill, then on a practical note, can you walk us through how you approach the engagement? What did it actually look like in practice?
There's quite a lot in here, so I'll try and condense it. But we undertook the work in probably 3 stages. The first stage was looking at AI maturity and assessment and opportunity analysis. That was just because the way we structured some of the workshops we undertook with the staff and departments at CIIB, they naturally fell out of those workshops. Then we looked at the governance layer and the vision and strategy, probably with the governance layer probably walking a bit ahead of the vision and strategy as we looked at that, and then pulling it all those first 4 stages together into the actual roadmap. So how we're going to deploy this. So looking at each one of those as briefly as I can. So the AI maturity assessment, that was there to see where the organisation sits in its ability to roll out AI at scale and manage it properly, adapt its business processes to that. So what we did, we look at 5 particular areas. So we look at leadership and strategy. So looking at the vision and strategic direction for AI in the organisation. We look at the people and skills, so the maturity of the workforce in its ability to use AI, but its confidence around that as well. So readiness for the staff to be able to deploy AI effectively. We look at data and the infrastructure. So data quality governance is important. As we all know, the AI is only good as the data it actually uses from. So is that data managed well? We then look at the governance and risk side of things. So does the CIIB have the right decision-making processes, oversight and risk management process to be able to support AI? And lastly, we look at ethics and responsible AI. Is it going to be deployed in a fair and transparent way across the organisation? So they are the 5 domains, and then we rated each one of those domains on a scale of 1 to 5. One being minimal awareness, no structure. Three, kind of you're in the developing side of things, so you've got some processes in place and you've got a good baseline in which to work for. And then you've got five, where you really truly optimize. And what we're not proposing as part of the that assessment is that every organisation should be at level 5. What the AI maturity assessment does, it lets you know where you are on that and what the risks are, importantly, of operating at that level, and what you need to do to bring it up to the next level to ensure that you are operating as the business wants to operate, because it might want to accept the risk. You don't, as I say, you don't need to be a level 5. Just for information, the CIB in an overall rating was at and they decided they wanted to move to level 3 over a 12-month period. So that's the maturity side of things, and I'll pick up on some of the actions associated with that later. Next was the opportunity analysis. So this is where we spent time with the staff looking at what their business problems were that they'd really like to be solved. So where's the waste, where's the opportunities to improve those business processes. And we ended up identifying 25 potential opportunities within this space, and we ended up categorizing those into true AI cases, so where AI is central to the outcome, AI enabled improvement, so which ones are supporting improving processes, 3 functional capabilities, to the requirement to be able to adopt it, and then there was actually some in there that there was AI wouldn't help, but the business raised them as an important, and so again it was just highlighting those to the business that actually these are issues that are non-AI related that you could get on and solve. So
I guess that's a kind of side benefit, isn't it? That through the process that staff had that opportunity to come forward with frustrations, the things that they were experiencing, that, you know, as you say, you didn't necessarily need AI to resolve all of those.
That's correct. And for each opportunity, there was quite a detailed analysis on each of those, not a fully developed business case, but very much at a high level. We looked at the problem it was going to solve, the expected value and benefit that's going to be driven, the success measures, the level of maturity. So tying it back to that maturity assessment, can this opportunity be delivered? It needs to be delivered with these maturity controls in place to do there, what the delivery effort was, what the strategic alignment was. So we had over 25 pieces of information associated with each opportunity, so it wasn't just a wish list without the relevant detail behind that. Then we looked at the governance layer and the vision and strategy. So just to clarify that, what that is, so the strategy defines what the organisation is looking to get out of AI and what outcomes it is seeking, and the framework for how to deliver that is in the governance framework, so the approval process, the control and monitoring. So you could look at that you would consult the strategy for intent and the framework for process and control. I'll come back to the 12-month roadmap later on, but in a little bit more detail. But the challenge around the 12-month roadmap was how you balance addressing your maturity improvements as well as layering in your opportunities, and how you can do those safely. And why only a 12-month roadmap? As Jenny said right at the start, you know, AI is changing so much. Setting a 2-year roadmap is not right, and you've got to be prepared as well. Just adding one last point, is that you may invest time and money in a solution, and 6-12 months later there could be new stuff that's come out from a supplier that makes that redundant, and you can do it a lot easier. So be prepared for that as you work through your roadmap.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bill. And I think just to amplify as well that the golden thread running through all of that work was the engagement with CIIB's staff, and then really feeling like they had the opportunity to come forward with their ideas, their worries, their frustrations, and to feel that that was really listened to and responded to through that work. So just on the governance framework, Bill, I know you've touched on this already, but just very briefly, can you just explain to us a bit more about why that came first before the roadmap? Because I think some people on the call might expect, not unreasonably, that the strategy would come before the governance.
So I mean, there was lots. It's ensuring that we have the right control frameworks in place, and it's also there to help build confidence across the organisation as well. So what we were conscious of was not creating a bureaucratic nightmare by having layers and layers of controls across there. So we've tried to keep them at a very high level. So you know, it's all about creating the clarity, confidence, and getting things done. So if we just briefly look at clarity, one of the government's framework covers that you'll see there is AI usage policy. So we talked about the two other, the strategy and the governance model, but the third important one really is that AI usage policy. Now, CIIB did have a one, but as a result of the work we did, we enhanced that. And what that policy isn't there is to strangle creativity and innovation. You know, we want staff to be able to do that in confidence, but to do it safely. So kind of key sections that provided that clarity. We listed in there the everyday usage of approved AI tools. So the statement actually encourages staff to use the existing tools to do their work. And I think that's an important highlight. So that, you know, it lists the tools you should be using to do your work and the confidence in you that. But it also gives highlights of how you're to use those tools. So don't, as David mentioned, load strategic information into that. Where it highlights when approval is required for AI usage, so again sets out some areas along that, and it also highlights what are prohibited areas. But one of the things we were keen to do was again that experimentation and innovation thing. There's actually a statement in there about that area, and you know, it's wanting staff to feel comfortable and experimenting with AI, but done in a safely and controlled way. So it provides pointers to there. So that's kind of bringing the clarity. And we also, within the framework, make sure we had we're very clear about responsibility and definitely a clear definition of who does what. So who's the accountable person for AI governance?
That's a crucial one, isn't it? Because one of the things that I recall from the survey was that there was and David, you might have something to say about this as well. There was quite a bit of a sense that it was an IT responsibility. When, you know, I think that when we first spoke about this, I think we were all in agreement that actually it goes far beyond IT. So yeah, perhaps you could share some reflections with us in that topic.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely not an IT project. It's an organisation. It's a people first project, and I think the work that Jen, you and Bill did in terms of doing that staff survey was really valuable. As I say, we got something like a 60% response rate, which was, I think, quite a bit higher than we thought. So this showed there was a level of engagement. There was a general, actually, you know, positive view about AI, but there were some concerns about what that looked like. So that was there. So it was important to sort of address that. And just picking up on Bill's point about some of the opportunity analysis, I think what was really valuable about that is it's not just about, you know, coming up with sort of the technology to deliver it and the technological solutions. You know, we actually talk about AI and automation because actually there are, you know, some things that AI can sort of help and enable. There are just some better ways of operating with our existing systems, and there's some sort of true AI use cases that we could deploy. But understanding that is really important. So it's important to sort of have that sort of cross-organizational approach. And I suppose I lead on it. I'm not saying I'm in any sense a sort of an AI expert. I think we're all continuing to learn, but having I guess a single point of contact that you can sort of make sure that we have a coherent plan that we can sort of take forward is I think is really important as an organisation. But again, just picking up on the point, I think having that guardrails so that people can experiment. I mean, we use Microsoft, so there are Copilot apps built into all of sort of the Microsoft solutions, and those are safe to use, and test and experiment. And I think we would encourage people to do that and come up with ways that can improve what they do day to day as a first step before you then get into deploying sort of full AI agents, which will come, but it's about having a structure to take the organization forward collectively together on this journey.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then sorry, I just wanted to come back to you, David, as well around governance. I was wondering how you and the team manage this alongside everything else that's on your very busy corporate agenda. I know CIB are across lots of things, and with your new chief exec coming in as well. So how did you fit all this in with everything else that you've got going on?
Yeah, I think I'm sure that people are sort of thinking and answering that question. So I think it's obviously we were keen to we needed some sort of extra sort of resource and support and some expertise, which is obviously why we reached out to Jen and Bill to do that. And I think that was a really actually relatively quick piece of work, but it was quite comprehensive. It involved individual staff survey as well as individual discussions with the leadership team and then sort of our senior management team below that. And I think people were engaged in that process, which was great, and enabled us to get to a point relatively quickly with a sort of plan of action to take forward and to build on some of the things that we had already, but to sort of fill in some of the other areas. So it's all about balancing priorities, but I think there's a recognition that doing nothing wasn't an option. And it did, very much did align with some of the other things that we were doing about, moving forward with sort of technology and supporting ultimately, what our members were asking for us. So, we prioritized it accordingly and, got some support. But equally, we're realistic about how quickly we're going to, move this forward. Not everything is going to happen overnight. That 12-month roadmap, I think, is really important that we'll touch on, and we're in very much in the sort of those building the sort of foundations, getting all of the governance in place. And as Bill said, it's not to stop people doing things, it's just to make sure that they feel comfortable and they can push on, and we sort of reduce any risk. So we will, we're on that, we're very much on that journey, but people are key. One of the things actually also came out from the staff survey was people were really calling out for sort of training and sort of upskilling themselves. It's quite handy. People in school might have seen, but the government have launched sort of an AI digital skills hub. So there's lots of really good resources in there. But equally, if you go into the Microsoft products, there are AI very quick, bite-sized training modules within there as well. So it's I think it's very much, it's part of what people do. It's not a separate thing. It's sort of part of everyday life, but managed in a sort of sensible and a pragmatic way. And we go on, as I say, go on that journey together rather than sort of jumping to an end technical solution. It's building the confidence, the skills, the knowledge within the team so that we can, responsibly adopt it.
And I think it's an ongoing conversation, isn't it? I noticed that in the data, the teams that were more member facing were perhaps more nervous about
Yeah.
AI coming in and the potential that that might have to, impact their jobs. And so I expect there'll be others on the call that might have staff with similar concerns. So perhaps you could just give us some insights into how you're managing that internally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've done is we've sort of, we've come up with the overarching sort of AI vision strategy that we've agreed with leadership team with sort of trustees, and that sets out sort of principles for responsible adoption. But also it says, why we're doing this, and it very much says it's about providing an improved member-centric solution. It's about providing operational efficiency and effectiveness and insights and data. Now, it's not about sort of removing people's jobs, but also it's being realistic. There are certain things that some of the customer facing teams will be doing that can be automated and replaced with AI. But what that means is rather than, let's say one of our customer service agents during renewals answering 50 emails and inquiries a day about sort of pay, how do I make payment or such like, we can sort of remove that sort of lower lower level administrative type tasks, so that actually they can have better conversations with the members. And alongside AI, we're doing a big piece of work around sort of data and data governance. And actually it means that they can sort of have more proactive conversations with members about saying, well, I noticed that you haven't done this, you've got this new job, what about this piece of CPD? Would you be interested in doing that? Or, you've been a member for however many years, would you like to become a fellow? So you can have those higher level conversations and provide a much better membership service. The AI, the data, the technology can support that, but actually still having that human conversation as well. And I think just picking up on one of the other things that Bill said, that the software vendors, their technology is developing fairly rapidly. Even in the last few months, we're now talking to our CRM provider, who's got an inbuilt sort of AI chatbot that we can deploy that will actually enable us to do some of the things I've just described there. I think it's recognizing there is concern, but it's about saying, look, as we grow, as we want to deliver a better membership service, we can provide some efficiency, but it's not about getting rid of the people interaction or people's jobs. We're not sort of leading with that. It's setting out that clear vision of why we're doing this, and all of the responsible reasons for doing it as well.
That's great. Yeah, so just being really clear on the intent and making sure that staff understand that, yes, the role might change and that's okay. The work will be more rewarding in the future, and that support for members, right? So the agents don't go to sleep, do they? So they can get answers to their queries 24/7, more responsive, and so forth. So it's a win-win-win, isn't it, if you can do these things in the right way? And I think as well, just picking up on your point as well, we work with CRM vendors across the sector. I think there's some really interesting work happening. You mentioned your CRM vendor there, Blue Light. We also seen some really exciting stuff coming out of Smart Impact and Pixelate. So there's lots of activity in the sector from the vendors, which is really positive to see. Okay, so Bill, I'm going to come back to you now. So you mentioned the opportunity analysis that you pulled together had, I think, 26 potential use cases for CIOB, and that you narrowed that down to 6 priorities. So can you just walk us through how you made those decisions and what made something a priority and what got parked?
Yeah, there was really quite a number of factors that drove that. I think the first one was obviously the maturity work. So what maturity work is really needed for the type of case we're looking at? So does it need to be at level 3, or could it be at level 2 on the strategy side of things, for example? So it was looking at where a solution would need to be on that maturity curve. We looked at risks. So was there good data to support that case? Was the sensitive data? What would be the impact of failure on the standing within the organisation with its members? Technical complexity as well. One of the driving factors was also capacity within the organisation, which David touched upon. You know, coming up with something that can be achieved within the 12 months alongside that. So what we made sure we did as well, was there any projects that were in flight that could benefit from AI? So if it was in flight, can we do that? And David mentioned their CRM project. So you'll see on the screen the member query handling. That's a perfect example of where we can piggyback on other work that was going. I think you also had a telephone system in train as well. Well, what AI could do, then we can piggyback off that. We were keen to identify early champions, so making sure that we had a workforce that was willing to trial that to enable success. And lastly, we wanted to make sure we spread those opportunities across the organisation, so it wasn't all centred within the members section, and no one else in the organisation was getting a loonies. So it was really a balance, and it came down to risk in each of those areas to ensure that we build that maturity, but making sure that not easy to implement, but you know, we can get to an ending in those 12 months. So there were staggered starts between starting the maturity stuff before moving into the user cases itself. The one that's I know we said 6 and there's only 4 on the screen. The one that I would like to mention is that didn't make it to the screen was one of the recommendations was creating an AI and automation hub for the staff to use. So a lightweight hub that contains guidance, approved tools, learning. So effectively a staff community on a side. They were learning from each other as well, because you know the stats show that a lot of people are using it, but let other staff learning across the piece be undertaken as well. And that's how we arrived at those 6 items, a balance of risks and along a number of items.
So that last piece there, Bill, the kind of knowledge exchange, if you like, that's about bringing people up to sort of similar levels of understanding. Correct. Is it?
Yeah.
Good stuff. David, back to you then. So we've talked a lot about strategy and governance dimensions of this, but I just want to come back to the human side for a moment, because of course you mentioned earlier, and I don't know if our audience caught that, but there was an interesting article that came out last year that I know Roy, your head of DDAP, mentioned in one of our meetings about the sort of 80% failure rate headline of AI use cases. And there's a blog article on the internet on the InterCloud9 website that speaks to that. So please do go away and have a look at that. But essentially, what that highlights is that any kind of technology adoption, whether it's digital transformation or now AI, does traditionally have a very high failure rate. So I wanted you to just help our audience to understand how you're tackling some of those human side adoption challenges around AI.
Yeah, I think we're certainly trying to learn from, not go down that route. And I think the what you need to do to avoid that is have a conversation with staff, be really clear about the requirements and what the issues are. So going back to what Bill was saying before, actually, not everything, AI is not going to solve every problem that you have. Actually, there might be some fairly, straightforward processes that actually don't require automation. It might be a simple process improvement. So it's back to understanding what you're trying to achieve and make sure you've got sort of some clear business requirements, and that involves a sort of a conversation with the team as well. Bill's mentioned that sort of hub. It's I know I've got some of my colleagues on the call. That's something that we're about to push out. What will be on there is an opportunity for a sort of a curated curriculum for people to sort of do training, all of the various government frameworks. It's about having that central sort of register of sort of AI initiatives and tools as we go forward, and very much having use cases that people can see the benefit of very quickly. So the high impact, sort of lower risk. I think the sort of the AI agent within the Blue Light CRM. It's out there. Other people are using it. From what we've initial conversations, that could have quite significant reduction in the sort of the number of inquiries that are coming through to customer service agents. There's opportunities, again, on the previous slide about how we manage CPD, and for other people on the call who that's in sort of in membership organizations where CPD is a big requirement. The auditing of that is again something that we could deploy AI in a sort of fairly controlled data set before we let sort of AI loose on our entire set of data within the organization. So I think to acknowledge the anxiety, I think yes, people coming at it from different views. We've got sort of AI, we're developing AI champions in each of our departments, so people who can sort of move things forward at a faster pace. We've got people who are very confident with it and are using a broad range of tools. People who are very keen to innovate, but equally, I was in a meeting yesterday with my finance team, and I won't name the person, but probably beginning of the year it was sort of not enthusiastic about AI, but it wasn't sort of something particular on his radar. He's actually just used it fairly recently and in a very small use case, and been able to produce a piece of work using AI. So it's those little wins and actually encouraging people to share those and the difference it sort of can make, and again accepting that we're all learning it together, but have the governance, have the framework, have the tools available, train people, and continue to communicate. And we do a sort of a monthly global staff update, and we're doing a sort of an update back to all the staff on where we're at the end of sort of Q1, with an opportunity for people to ask myself and some of the other members of the team questions on that as well, in a very open, transparent way.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to see that you're very much treating that as an ongoing conversation with your staff team, not just a one-off survey and the workshops, of course, that we did, but I know that you understand and really recognise the importance of keeping that dialogue going with your staff team. So I want to just end the conversation then by zooming out then and thinking about how this work connects with CIIB's wider corporate strategy, and what does the next 12 months look like, David, then on your roadmap?
Yeah, it's very much as you've sort of got sort of phrased it there, and that's sort of what we're presenting back. We're in that sort of foundation stage at the moment, so it's making sure that we've got those frameworks in place, the governance there, and starting to identify where we've got use cases that we can start deploying, and part of that will be sort of learning, developing, training, and sort of feeding back. So it's important to know there are lots and lots of things going on in the organisation. So starting with the sort of the governance, the guardrails, the framework is really, really important before you sort of then push on, and certainly as you do the pilots, it's being very clear about what you're trying to achieve. So you don't just rush into something and end up in one of those 80% that fails. And then some of that will be and that phase 3 there you've got, Jen, very much embedding it, and again just referring back to the fact that these things are moving on really, really quickly. It's a 12-month roadmap, but it's already within the first sort of quarter there are things that are changing, and we're being agile and applying sort of learnings or new knowledge as we go through. So it's an ongoing conversation, it's an iterative process, and probably of all the things that we're doing, it's the one that needs to be the most agile, because the pace of technology development is pretty rapid. So it will be something that we keep under, constant review, and it's something that is actually our trustees are keen to see a higher level version of this and how we're progressing. So it's got quite high profile within the organization, but again, it's in a controlled, sort of managed, realistic way with all the other things that we're doing as well.
With all the other things.
Yeah, but it does, as I think you were saying earlier, Jen, it cuts across the organization. It does underpin everything we do, but it shouldn't dominate everything we do. Ultimately, it's about how do we best serve our members, and this is a tool, a very powerful tool to help us do that.
Yeah, absolutely, and bringing it back to members is absolutely crucial, isn't it? So my final question, while our audience thinks about any questions that you folks might have for David and for Bill this morning, is if you were speaking to a CEO or David, one of your contemporaries across the sector, who's kind of sitting on the fence at the moment and not sure what they should do, whether they should do anything, what advice would you give to people? Just a quick takeaway.
I think the fact that your first slide, it's 13th in the priorities. I think it needs to be up there in one of, it doesn't have to necessarily be the top, but it should be up there in one of the key priorities. And I think one of the things we were talking about, Jenny, is don't wait for the perfect conditions. You just need to sort of jump in. You won't have all the answers, except that you don't have all the answers, but you need to start and need to understand where you are so you can move forward. And on that, that scale of 1 to 5 in terms of that, maturity assessment, understanding where you're at, the fact that we're at 2, that's that's fine. We know where we're at. We want to move it forward to a 3. It's unrealistic to sort of say, well, we need to be at 5. That would just be disproportionate. So it's I think to do something, to understand where you're at, and then pick use cases that would actually make a difference to the members and the team, and make sure that you take the staff on the journey, recognizing this is, again, going back to it, it's an organizational, people-led project first, or initiative. The technology underpins it, but it doesn't start with the technology.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. I'm going to turn my attention then to our Q&As then. So folks, please do feel free to drop any questions in there. I'm going to address the first one to yourself, Bill. For those of you that don't know Bill, Bill, before he joined us, was the former IT director for the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, so has lots of hands-on experience of implementing AI technology. So the question is, Bill, how can you safeguard against staff just blindly using AI?
I think I touched on the AI policy, and making sure staff are aware of that. So it's encouraging, but making sure the right guardrails are in place and they understand what those guardrails are. And I think that goes a long way. And like David has touched on, that education piece, bringing the organisation with you with quarterly updates, and talking about successes and also failures as well, because that's the key thing. Is you might try something, it doesn't work, so don't beat yourself up around that. If it's not worked or it's too hard to maintain, then move on. There are other opportunities.
Yeah, great, thanks, Bill. I'll just give a chance for any more questions to come through, and whilst I do that, perhaps you can turn your attention then to smaller organisations, Bill, with limited resources. As CIIB, I'd say, would be a reasonable sized membership organisation, but what about those that are smaller? How do they deliver proportionate governance in a small organisation with limited resources?
I think it's also proportionate about what AI can do for that organisation as well. So it's all about starting off with some of the simple stuff, with the use of Copilot, making sure you've got the right guardrails around Copilot, and that individual productivity piece is what I'd probably concentrate on with a smaller organisation to get the ball rolling, and that can then highlight what governance is needed around that. You may not need to go to the level of governance we've provided to David. We're quite a layered approach in some areas, and understanding where it is used, because I think it's important that people within the organisation know where it's being used, what the risks are being used in that, and that's why I start off simple. But there are opportunities, particularly in smaller organisations, to make simple tweaks using the Microsoft tool set that can free up what could be considerable resource. So it's all about not shooting for the big stuff, I think, in the organisation. Get that foundation stuff with tried and tested tools.
Great, thank you. So I've got a question here that says, you noted that things move on quite quickly and new solutions can supersede some you are already implementing. How do you best navigate this to stop resource wastage, time and money?
Again, I think it comes back to, and this probably goes to most IT projects, is making sure you get the basics right. So make sure you contain the scope of what you're trying to do with it initially. You can always build on that later if you're finding it's a success on that. But there's nothing worse than you try to create this functional, rich AI stuff, and then someone comes along 3 months later and said, and we've got this all out the box for you. So it's all about building momentum. As you go through. I think that's how I would handle it.
And David, you mentioned about being agile, right? That sounds like that's pretty key in this environment.
Yeah, I think it's important to be agile, and it's not a linear path that you're going to go on. I think it's probably important as well, and to have conversations with all your software providers, because yes, you can. I mean, we will probably build some level of AI agent, particularly for our needs. But actually, a lot of our vendors are building AI into their platforms, whether they're CRM providers, whether they're our finance system, our HR system. So it's having those conversations, and if you've got something that's sort of, I suppose, out of the box, that's been tried and tested, integrated, it's becoming sort of pervasive part of that solution. And speaking to one of our vendors the other day, they used to go and buy up IT companies to bolt on particular modules for their suite of services. They're actually now being able to use AI to develop that stuff themselves, that they might have actually had to go and buy someone before. So I suppose that was a really interesting conversation. It's that sort of pace of change. So I think having conversations, understanding people's roadmaps and what's coming down the path, potentially avoids maybe what that question was alluding to. Sort of spending a lot of time doing something that may become redundant. But Bill's point's right. Be clear about what you want to do, and don't try and shoot for stars. Make it very specific, and you can always build on that. But have parallel conversations, speak to other people, other bodies, and learn. It's it's a collective journey we're on as well, particularly in the space that we operate.
Thanks, guys, and we're about out of time. So there was a question in the chat, which I'll answer by saying we've got a capability framework, maturity framework, governance documents on our website. Please feel free to download those. They're all free resources. Use at your will. And if you do need any information, please do get in touch with us. And David, Bill, thank you so much for your time this morning, and wishing everyone a very happy weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.